Imagine you're just staring at your phone, right? And your heart is just pounding against your ribs.
Oh, yeah.
Your palms are literally sweating because, I know, a colleague just sent you this passive-aggressive message on Slack.
The worst.
Right. And your biology is reacting with the exact same cascade of stress hormones as if, like, a tiger is about to pounce on you from the bushes. But there is no tiger.
No.
There are just, pixels on a screen.
Yeah.
And today, we're looking at a document from today, actually August 22, 2026.
Yeah.
And it argues that this modern anxiety is, well, it's essentially a biological simulation. And it uses a 2,000-year-old Sanskrit text to sort of give us the cheat code to hack our way out of it.
It's honestly a staggering synthesis. The text we're diving into today is this really fascinating contemporary commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 7, verses 13 and 14.
Yeah.
And what makes this particular commentary so vital, I think, is that it strips away a lot of the traditional the theological interpretation.
Oh, yeah, the stuff you usually associate with it.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, it maps these ancient philosophical concepts directly onto the absolute cutting edge of evolutionary psychology and cognitive science.
Okay, but let's unpack this right away, because if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that, I don't know, that bone-deep fatigue of trying to just micromanage your life, or, you feel like you're drowning in digital distractions and status anxiety.
Which is everyone.
Right, literally everyone. This isn't just an abstract thought experiment. It's a practical manual. So the commentary starts with chapter 7, verse 13, and it makes this foundational claim about human perception. It states that the entire world is deluded. The Sanskrit word is mohitam, by 3 states of being composed of the guasas. And because of this delusion, we fail to recognize the imperishable observer, which is the Paramavyan.
Yeah, and to understand what the source actually means by mohitam, or this fundamental cognitive delusion, the commentary brings in the work of cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman.
Oh, right.
Specifically his book, The Case Against Reality.
Yeah, that book broke my brain a little bit.
It's a heavy one. So the ancient text says reality is obscured by the gons, right? These 3 fundamental qualities of nature, which are sattva, rajas, and tamas.
Okay.
And what's fascinating here is how the source correlates this directly to Hoffman's evolutionary game theory simulations, which proves something incredibly counterintuitive.
Which is? That
human sensory perception did not evolve to see objective truth.
Right. I remember when Hoffman's research first started making waves. The basic premise is that organisms that perceive reality exactly as it is, they actually get outcompeted by organisms that are tuned only to perceive fitness payoffs.
That's the core of it, yeah. He ran, hundreds of thousands of computer simulations mapping evolutionary population dynamics. And he put these quote-unquote truth-seeking organisms up against fitness payoff organisms.
Right.
And in every single simulation, the organism that saw objective reality went extinct.
Every single time.
Every time. Evolution actively punishes the perception of truth because rendering the infinite, objective complexity of the universe, it just requires way too much metabolic energy.
So it's like if you're busy marveling at the quantum structure of a tiger's fur, you're not running away.
Right, I die.
Yeah.
So evolution doesn't reward truth. It rewards actional symbols that just keep you alive long enough to reproduce.
And the classic metaphor Hoffman uses, which the source we're looking at anchors on heavily, is the computer desktop interface.
Right.
Like, a file on your computer isn't literally a little blue folder sitting inside the motherboard somewhere.
Yeah, of course not.
It's just a useful illusion.
Yeah.
So I don't have to write, binary code to delete a photo of my dog. I just drag it to a little trash can icon.
Sure, yeah. We all know the desktop metaphor by now, but where the source takes it is a massive step forward. It maps that interface theory directly onto the gunas.
Right.
It argues that sattva, rajas, and tamas are basically the primary coding languages of our biological desktop.
Okay, lay that out for me.
Well, let's look at the neurobiology here, because the commentary bridges these ancient terms with modern brain function in a really cool way. So rajas is described in the Gita as agitation, passion, or desire, right?
Yeah.
Neurobiologically, the source maps this to the dopaminergic pursuit system and sympathetic nervous system arousal.
So like the drive to just go get things.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. The hunt, the ambition. When you see a notification on your phone and you get that hit of dopamine, That's rajas.
Oh, wow.
It's an icon flashing on your biological desktop, basically saying, resource acquired, status elevated.
Right, right.
And then you have tamas, which the Gita defines as dullness, inertia, or fear.
Okay.
The source maps tamas to the dorsal vagal shutdown response, or the brain's default mode network looping in depression. It's the immobilization response.
So when you get rejected or you fail at something, your system powers down to conserve energy.
Exactly. And finally, sattva, which is clarity and balance, that gets mapped to the parasympathetic flow state, ventral vagal safety.
Okay, so the argument here is that these states, clarity, desire, dullness, they are not fundamental truths of the universe.
Right. Well,
They are just the evolutionary icons our biological software generates to prompt us into action.
you got it.
But, okay, I want to push back on the commentary here just a little bit.
Sure.
If these gunas are the desktop icons and they map perfectly to our survival mechanisms, aren't they, totally necessary?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if I don't have the quote-unquote fear icon, if tamas doesn't trigger when a car swerves into my lane on the highway, I die.
Right.
So is this commentary actually suggesting we try to ignore or, I don't know, delete the interface?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like a fast track to getting yourself killed.
Yeah, and that's the trap a lot of people fall into when they first read Eastern philosophy, right? They think it demands this total detachment from the physical world, like you just sit in a cave.
Right, just ignore everything.
But the commentary is really explicit here. The problem is not the interface. You still have to play the game of life. You still have to steer your car out of the way. Right.
The psychological crisis, what the source actually diagnoses as mohitam, the delusion, is when we mistake the icons for the actual hard drive.
Mistaking the interface for fundamental reality.
Yes. We get so completely absorbed in the simulation that we literally forget it's a simulation.
Wow.
And the source details how this specifically fuels our modern psychological epidemics. Take status anxiety, for example.
Okay, yeah.
When you post something online and the likes don't come in, your brain doesn't objectively say, oh, a digital metric on a server somewhere in California is low.
Right. It doesn't do that at all.
No. Your brain, which is operating on this ancient evolutionary operating system, says, my social status in the tribe is dropping.
I'm going to be kicked out.
I will be ostracized, I will be left alone on the savannah, and I will starve to death.
So the biological desktop just flashes a massive red tamas icon, like fear, panic, dullness.
Yes,
Cool.
and because you are under the spell of mohitam, because you're deluded, you believe the icon.
You buy into it. You identify with it completely. You don't say to yourself, my organism is currently experiencing a survival response.
No, you say, I am a failure.
Exactly. I am worthless. You merge with the simulation. You become the dopamine loop.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. The source offers the antidote here. Verse 13 says, the world fails to recognize the avyam, which is the unchanging substrate, the imperishable observer.
Right, the underlying operating system beneath the desktop icons.
Which is such a massive paradigm shift. Because the commentary asserts that even while your psychological moods and your external circumstances are, violently
It's
fluctuating,
like a roller coaster.
even while you are in the deepest depths of a dopamine loop or a state of just sheer panic about your career, the witnessing consciousness remains totally untouched. It's whole and it's serene.
It is the difference between the chaotic movie playing on the screen and the screen itself.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
The screen doesn't get burned when it displays a picture of an explosion.
Right.
It doesn't get wet when it displays a hurricane. The witnessing consciousness, the avyam, is simply the space in which the gunas, these neurochemical states of sattva, rajas, and tamas, arise and fall.
Okay, but let's talk about what that actually feels like in practice. Because, intellectually, I can grasp that.
Sure.
I can read Hoffman, I can read the Gita, and I can sit here and nod along. But I'll be honest, last Tuesday, I was trying to apply this witnessing state.
Okay, how'd it go?
Well, I was feeling pretty good, pretty detached. And then I got an incredibly frustrating email from a client.
Oh.
And instantly, the desktop took over.
Of course it did.
My heart rate spiked, my jaw clenched, and I spent the next 2 hours completely consumed by rajas. Just pure agitated desire to write a blistering reply and, reassert my status.
You merge it with the icon.
I failed instantly. So if this serene witnessing consciousness is always there, always beneath the surface, why is it so incredibly hard to actually access it when the pressure is on?
Well, that specific frustration, that feeling of total failure despite having the intellectual understanding, is precisely what bridges us into chapter 7, verse 14.
Okay.
You aren't failing because you aren't trying hard enough. You are hitting the fundamental bug in the human operating system.
A bug in the system.
Yeah. Verse 14 states that the divine illusion, or Maya, which is made of the three glutas, is exceedingly difficult to cross over.
Mm.
The Sanskrit term used is durachaya. It means nearly insurmountable.
So the text is actively validating that it's supposed to be hard.
It's validating why it's hard. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the commentary's explanation here completely dismantles the modern self-help industry.
Really? How so?
Because it unpacks durachaya by explaining the mechanical failure of willpower. The source uses this brilliant tech analogy. It says, trying to defeat cognitive delusion using your egoic intellect is like trying to patch a software bug using the exact same buggy code that generated the error in the first place.
Oh, because the ego itself is just an artifact of the Gaias.
Precisely. The ego, your sense of a separate, striving self, is just a cluster of rajas and tamas icons.
Right.
It's a survival mechanism generated by the brain to protect the biological organism. So when you decide, quote, I'm going to defeat my anxiety, well, who is the I making that decision?
It's the ego.
It's the ego. And why does it want to defeat anxiety? Because it wants to feel secure to maintain control over its environment.
Which is just more survival drive.
Exactly. That is just more rajas. That is just more dopaminergic pursuit masquerading as spiritual growth.
So you're trying to use the matrix to hack the matrix?
Yes.
That is huge. I mean, think about the entire grind set culture right now.
Oh, yeah.
The whole optimization culture. You wake up at 4 a.m., you plunge into an ice bath, you fiercely meditate for 2 hours, you track your macros, you journal your gratitude.
It sounds exhausting.
And you were doing it all with this white-knuckled intensity to prove you were in control of your life.
And all you are doing is spinning the wheels of the biological simulation faster and faster. You are generating massive amounts of rajas to fight off tamas. You're using agitation to fight fear. The commentary points out that direct self-effort without a fundamental shift in perspective is just doomed.
Because you're still in the game.
Right. The more you fight the simulation on its own terms, using the weapons of the simulation, willpower, intellect, ego, the more real the simulation feels. You actually validate the reality of the illusion by fighting it so intensely.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Are we just perpetually stuck in the simulation? And I'm looking at this from a practical standpoint, and I feel like the commentary has just put us in an existential checkmate.
It really does feel that way.
Right. Because if my anxiety is a biological survival icon, and my willpower to fight the anxiety is also a biological survival icon, how do I get out? If the ego is the bug, I can't use the ego to fix the bug.
Right. It is a checkmate for the ego. Absolutely.
Or trapped.
Well, the ego cannot solve the problem of the ego, but that is where the second half of verse 14 provides the exit strategy. The text says that this divine illusion is incredibly difficult to cross over, but those who take refuge in the Supreme, the Sanskrit is mam eva ye prapadante, easily cross beyond this ocean of illusion. Mayam eta tarantite.
Taking refuge. Okay, so this translates to the concept of prapati, or surrender.
Yes.
And I have to push back hard here on behalf of anyone listening who operates in a competitive environment.
I expected you might.
Because when highly driven, curious people hear the word surrender, they immediately think of giving up. Like in a hyper-competitive economy, if I just surrender and step back from my desires and my stress, I'm going to lose my edge.
Sure.
I'm going to drop the ball and I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
This sounds, frankly, like an intellectual excuse for apathy.
It's a very common reaction. I mean, it's the default reaction for most of us in the West. But the commentary is explicitly clear that prapati is not passive defeatism.
Oh.
It has absolutely nothing to do with apathy or stopping your actions in the physical world. The source translates prapati as cognitive reframing and psychological surrender.
What is the mechanical difference between psychological surrender and just giving up then?
Well, giving up is a state of tamas.
Wellness.
Right. It is dorsal vagal shutdown. It is the ego essentially saying, I can't win the game, so I'm going to collapse and play the victim.
Right.
The ego is still completely obsessed with the outcome in that state. It's just depressed about it. Psychological surrender, true prapati, is dropping the exhausting illusion that the ego is in total control of the outcome in the first place.
Oh, I see. It's shifting the identity attached to the action, not stopping the action itself.
Exactly. You still write the email to the client. You still show up for the big presentation. You still dodge the swerving car.
Right.
But you realize that you, as this small biological ego running a survival desktop, do not actually possess the processing power to manage the infinite complexity of reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
Surrender in this context is an act of profound psychological trust. You are essentially resigning from a job you never actually held.
You realize you aren't the CEO of the universe.
And what a relief that is. You are surrendering to the underlying substrate, the supreme intelligence sustaining the cosmos. You acknowledge that, your heart beats without your conscious command.
Yes.
Your cells divide, the planets orbit, the global economy shifts, and all of it happens in this vast interconnected web that is infinitely beyond your ego's control.
So when I get that frustrating email from my client, the egoic response, the Mohitam response, is to merge with the Raja's icon.
Yeah.
It's to say, I have to fix this, I have to defend my status, I am personally under attack.
Exactly.
But the psychological surrender response is to just notice the icon flashing, like, there is sympathetic nervous system arousal. The biological software is generating a stress response because it perceives a threat to resources.
And you witness it from the position of the avyam, the imperishable observer. You don't fight the stress.
Right.
You don't try to willpower it away, because fighting it just creates more agitation, more rajas. You just allow it to exist on the screen while anchoring your identity in the screen itself.
Which brings us to the promise at the end of the verse. Karantita. They cross over.
Yes.
And the source points out the tangible psychological benefits of this shift. Like, when you anchor your identity in that witnessing consciousness, the things that usually grip us naturally dissolve.
Right.
Not because we went to war with them, but because we just stopped playing the game on their level.
We stop feeding them rendering power, to use the computer metaphor again.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I mean, think about the energy you spend every single day managing your digital profile, worrying about how you are perceived by your peers, agonizing over past mistakes, or dreading future failures.
It's a full-time job.
It is. And the commentary highlights that all of that is metabolic energy spent trying to optimize a biological simulation that was never designed to make you happy.
Wow.
It was only designed to keep you surviving.
So true optimization isn't about perfectly managing all the icons on your desktop so you never feel a negative emotion. True optimization is realizing you don't have to be the desktop at all.
Exactly. You allow the gooches to do what the goose do there.
Right.
The body will get tired. The mind will get excited. The simulation will run its weather patterns based on external stimuli. But you trust the underlying intelligence of the system. You step back into the serene awareness that simply observes it all.
Okay, let's quickly trace the arc of what we've covered, because this is frankly a massive cognitive shift to integrate.
It is a lot to take in.
We started by redefining reality, not as a place where we are objectively interacting with truth, but as a biological desktop interface driven by the guchas. Clarity, desire, and fear are just evolutionary icons designed for fitness payoffs.
And from there, we identified the trap of mohitam, mistaking those survival icons for our true identity, which leads directly to the modern epidemics of status anxiety and dopamine addiction.
We literally become the simulation.
We do.
Then we confronted the ultimate bug in the system in verse 14, the painful realization that you cannot use the ego to fix the ego. Willpower alone fails because trying to control your psychological state is just generating more agitation.
Fighting the matrix with the matrix.
Right. And finally, we arrived at the exit strategy, prapati, psychological surrender. Dropping the illusion of control, stepping out of the evolutionary rat race of the mind, and anchoring ourselves back in the serene, witnessing consciousness, the avyam.
And this raises an important question, I think, when you look at how all this applies to our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, which actually leads me to a final thought I want to leave our listeners with today.
Mm-hmm.
As we build on this source material, it opens up a really fascinating philosophical paradox.
Yeah.
If our entire biological reality, our fears, our passions, our deeply held beliefs, if it's all just a survival interface, and the ultimate goal is to anchor our identity in this detached, pure consciousness, well, what happens to human empathy?
That is the big question.
Right. If we successfully step outside the matrix and we start viewing our own deepest pain and our own deepest desires as just desktop icons, does that make us cold? Does it make us disconnected from the messy, beautiful reality of the human experience?
Right, like we become robots.
Exactly. Or is it the exact opposite?
Yeah.
Does letting go of that exhausting illusion of egoic control actually free up our cognitive and emotional bandwidth?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we aren't so utterly consumed by our own survival icons, if we aren't constantly fighting to protect our own simulated status, does that detachment actually allow us to experience infinitely more compassion for everyone else out there who is still totally trapped in the simulation?
Wow.
So think about that today as you interact with the world. Observe your own desktop icons. Notice when your system flashes fear or desire. And don't fight it, don't try to fix it. Just see if you can take a half step back to simply witness the screen. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the ancient matrix. We'll see you next time.